Welcome to part 2 of creating a slideshow in Adobe Premiere Pro. In the last tutorial, we talked about how to insert clips into the timeline. We first imported them into our project, and then we inserted an audio clip and we inserted a video clip into the timeline. In this section, we're going to take a look at inserting effects to make transitions between images, and we're also going to look at putting a title onto your video as well. So I've gone ahead and just worked ahead a little bit, and I've added a couple of more video clips to the timeline. You can see them here, and now of course when I play this, you'll see that it switches to each flower or each image subsequently. So that's great, it looks okay, but what I really would like to do is have some kind of a transition in between the images, so it doesn't just do this sort of hard cut, right, which is kind of boring. So over here I have my effects palette down here in the lower corner, and I have various different things that I can do here. I have audio effects and transitions, which we'll be looking at later, and I also have video effects and video transitions, and it's the video transitions that I want to look at right now. So there's a bunch of different kinds of transitions, and you're free to play around and experiment with them as much as you want. For the first transition we're going to do, I just want to keep it really simple. So I'm going to use what's called a dissolve. And a dissolve, basically what that means is as one image fades out, another one fades in. You see here that there's one called a cross dissolve, and this is a very common effect, and that's why it's highlighted here in red, so that because it makes it easy to spot, so you can just sort of drag it whenever you need it. So if I want to add this effect to my timeline, then all I do is I click on it and I pick it up, and you'll see that that hand appears again, and I just drop it right onto my timeline. And you'll notice that as I drop it, it sort of gives a highlight to the area where the effect is being dropped, and that's important because you want to make sure that it gets dropped right in between the two clips, so in between the Blue Daisy clip and the Lotus clip. And then when I drop it, you'll see this little cross dissolve highlight happens, and that's where my transition is actually going to sit. So now if I back up my timeline indicator a little bit, right before the the transition happens, and then I play my timeline, you'll see it gives a nice dissolve. I'll play it again. Transition from one image to another. Sort of softens the look a little bit, makes it a little bit nicer, maybe fits with the music a little bit better. If I want to drop another type of transition, then I have a whole bunch of different ones to choose from. I have page peels, I have slides, I have wipes, and of course you can play around with these as you wish. I'll use a page turn just to show what that could look like. So again, I'm just going to pick it up out of my effects bin, I'm going to drop it on the timeline, make sure that that highlight is appearing right in between those two effects, so that the transition sits right in the middle of the two different pieces of video, and then drop it. And then again, I move my timeline indicator to just before the transition and play, and then you'll see the page turn happen. So that looks all right. If I want to change some of the timing of the dissolve, make it slower, make it faster, then all I need to do is I just double click on the transition itself. You'll see that it highlights here, and then up here in my source window I get the effect controls, and you see here there's something called duration, and I can actually set that duration to be whatever I want. So right now it's set for 1 second. If I want it to be set for 2 seconds, I can just go 200, hit enter, and now my transition is 2 seconds long, so it just slows it down a bit. And if I decide that maybe that is now too short, I could go back to 1 second. Or too long, rather. And there it is, sped up again. So then you could, like I said, you could add then another transition between these two items if you like. And then very simply just sort of does a little push to the left. So that's how you add a transition into your timeline. You can make transitions between any types of video clips or images, and then of course when I play it back, you have something that's starting to come together and make a little more sense. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to add a title. So titles are very effective and very easy to do in Adobe Premiere Pro. And essentially all you're going to do is you just go to the title menu, which is right up here at the top, and you go New Title. It gives you 3 types of options. You get default still, default roll, default crawl. We won't worry about based on template right quite now. So default still is just going to give you a still title. Text appears on the screen and then disappears. A roll is like a credit roll, say at the end of a movie or a TV show. And a crawl is a horizontal crawl that goes from left to right across the screen that you sometimes see on like a news show like CNN or something like that. So we're going to use the still for this exercise. So I'm going to click on default still. I'm going to give my title a name, so I'm going to say main title, because it's going to be my opening title, and then I click OK. And now your title window appears. Your title window is going to show you the frame of video wherever your timeline indicator is at that moment. And it's really just like a title tool. So if you've done any work at all with Photoshop or any titling tool, it's going to work very similarly. I can choose my font, and then I can just click on the type tool, which is over here on the left-hand menu. And then wherever I click, that's where my title is going to start. And I can say, My Beautiful Flowers. And then if I click the arrow or selection tool, it allows me then to select that title and move it wherever I want to on the screen. Right? And you can keep it inside this bounding box, or you can move it a little bit over if you like to. Okay, so I'm going to say I'm happy with that. Then all I do there, I don't need to save it. I just need to close the title tool. And you'll see what's happened is now the main title has shown up as one of my assets. If I double click on it again, it opens it up again and I can edit it. Or I can just pick it up, and you see it turns to the hand again, and then drag it into my timeline and set it wherever I would like that title to appear. If I want to make this whole thing a bit shorter, you can do this with any clip actually. If I want to make this whole thing a bit shorter, right now if I hover my mouse over the end, it shows that the duration is 5 seconds, and that's the default. Well, I think that's a bit too long, so I'm going to just shorten it a little bit, and you see that it shortens it as I go through, and now it's at 1 second, so I've made it 1 second shorter. I can make it shorter again if I like, and you can just line it up to wherever you want it to start and end. So now when I play my timeline, my title comes in and it comes out, but it sort of snaps on and snaps off, and that's not really what I want. So I can do the same thing I do with my video, where I can actually have it dissolve in and dissolve out, so it kind of smooths out the transition a bit. And to do this, I'm just going to take my cross dissolve effect, and I'm going to drop it on to the beginning of the title, and you see that it highlights, and then I drop it, and then I want it to fade out as well. So I'm going to take that cross dissolve effect again and drop it on to the end of my clip. Now when I play my timeline, it does this really nice fade in and fade out. And I can move this around and tweak it just so that it starts and ends at exactly the right time. So that's how you would make some effects, put some effects into your timeline, and then add a title. In the next section, we're going to look at tweaking our audio a little bit more and getting ready to export our finished video.